Good morning. My name is Brenda Morant, and I am the founder of the International Women's Think Tank. Welcome and happy Women's History Month. Today we celebrate the many achievements of women throughout history, as well as address challenges and issues we face moving forward to obtain full gender equality. In commemoration of Women's History Month, the International Women's Think Tank has partnered with the United Nations Association of USA, the Atlanta chapter, and the Regional Center of Expertise of Greater Atlanta to host today's Women's Empowerment Roundtable Summit, Achieving Global Goals, Best Practices, and Lessons Learned. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, provide a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. At its very heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action by all countries, developing into a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go together with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. The Women's Empowerment Roundtable aims to optimize, support, and increase the global mandate of promoting gender equality and empowering women by connecting communities from across the globe on critical issues such as the impact of COVID-19 on women and children and the importance of entrepreneurship and partnerships. Our speakers will share with you their journey of best practices and lessons learned in the achievement of the global goals pertaining to women's livelihood, women's empowerment, gender equality, female leadership, economic empowerment, child well-being, and the effects of COVID on our lives. Welcome to the Women's Empowerment Roundtable.
Ms. Afangalo comes to the United Nations with a host of experience as a counselor in the Liberian Foreign Service. Welcome, Ms. Afangalo. We're delighted to have you today.
Thank you very much, Ramona. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be here and share this platform with all these dynamic and amazing participants. I would like to thank the United Nations Association and the International Women's Think Tank for the opportunity to participate in this important event. During my undergraduate and graduate years, I served as an intern for UNA at their centers in Cairo, Egypt, and Boston, Massachusetts. So this is more of a homecoming for me. Therefore, all protocols observed, I would like to begin. At the opening of the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, only a few days ago, His Excellency Mr. Volkan Bozkır, President of the 75th session, United Nations General Assembly, and I quote, "The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development will not be achieved without guaranteeing women's full and effective participation and decision making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence against women," unquote. Both the observances of International Women's Day on March 8th and the 65th Commission on the Status of Women, which is currently in session at the United Nations, have focused on women's political leadership as a theme, a befitting selection given the inextricable link of gender equality to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. My journey at the United Nations was preceded by dynamic women who maximized the privilege accorded them by a country which evolved progressively to recognize the potential in women's leadership, to begin to appoint women to positions of power at the time when many countries were not. Liberia appointed its first female cabinet minister, Supreme Court justice, and women parliamentarians in the early 1970s. Today, I am honored to be a Liberian UN delegate and to have made the transition to the office of the President of the General Assembly to serve in the 75th session under the presidency of Turkey. Opportunities like this, like the one I've been afforded, are sine qua non to ensure that women from across the globe have the opportunity to lend their voices to multilateralism. Pridefully, Liberian women have a successful and positive history in the United Nations and beyond. Liberia's permanent representative to the United Nations in 1970 became the first African female president of the United Nations General Assembly during its 24th session and remains one of only 4 women presidents in the organization's 75-year history. Liberia continues to produce women trailblazers, electing the first female president in Africa, a Nobel Peace Laureate, and courageous women activists who dared to challenge the status quo and impacted the peace process after a protracted civil conflict. Currently, Liberia has a female vice president, one of the few on the continent. The United Nations at 75 has evolved into more than what the expectation for the international body was at its founding. As part of the commemorative activities marking the 75th anniversary, a symbolic signing of the United Nations Charter was organized by the Group of Friends of Gender Parity, an initiative aimed at reflecting a more representative picture of the General Assembly, which is now comprised of over 50 female permanent representatives. While still not at full parity, this is significantly more than the 4 women out of the 850 delegates present in San Francisco in 1945 at the original signing of the Charter. The landscape at the United Nations is gradually changing and being filled by more women. However, we are not there yet. More growth is needed in the number of women sitting at the table and taking part in the decision-making spaces and processes at the multilateral and intergovernmental level. While the numbers are important, equally important are the voices of women throughout the halls of the General Assembly. Women need to be heard in the decisions that affect them and ensure that decisions are inclusive and representative of the needs and priorities of women and hence the people they represent. Women delegates need to be given the space to participate in panels, executive boards, and every deliberation. This will allow them the opportunity to amplify gender equality and ensure it is mainstreamed throughout all processes of the General Assembly and the United Nations at large. Gender equality and ending all forms of discrimination against women is not just women's issue. It is a whole of society issue. Progress requires partnerships and most of all, political will. Women leaders, including young girls, must be supported to succeed. The Generation Equality Forums, to be held in Mexico and Paris this year, present an opportunity. They will provide the chance for transformative change and the passing of the torch to the next generation of activists. We can all contribute to the acceleration of gender equality by joining this diverse coalition of actors and actively advocating for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls as a fundamental milestone for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fangalo. We appreciate your remarks. We also thank you for sharing information in the history about your country, Liberia, in leading in global, in having women to participate in leadership roles. You are indeed right. We need more women sitting at the table in order to create a just, inclusive, and vibrant global society. Next, we're going to have another keynote speaker. We have Miss Monica Dolores Hooks. She is Executive Director of the City of Atlanta's Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. And in that office, she is responsible for the retention and development of women entrepreneurs in the City of Atlanta. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much, Dr. Houston. It is an honor and a pleasure to speak to the women at this roundtable. I'd like to give my humble thanks to the United Nations Association of Atlanta, the International Women's Think Tank, RCE of Greater Atlanta, and the Mayor's Office of International Affairs. Today, I'm looking to speak to the audience and to this group of women about the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, a bit about my personal story, and then I'd like to tie those topics back to how to ensure that we have a sustainable for empowering our girls, our women. So first, a little bit about the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative. We is what we call it affectionately WEI. We was born in the fall of 2015 as a idea out of the mayor's office. And what the mayor thought is that women needed more tools and resources to sustain stronger communities and to sustain economic development. We are, again, a 15-month incubator focused on early stage startups. We're industry agnostic, and what we offer those startups is programming, social capital, and co-working space in the historic Flatiron building in downtown Atlanta. Again, as I had mentioned, the mayor's office knew that women needed more resources and tools to sustain their businesses and to drive economic development for the city. We knew at that time that many women were working out of their homes, and that provided an impediment to the growth of their business. As an example, you wouldn't want to invite a client into your home to make sure that you're safe and that you can do business in a business environment as opposed to a home environment. So those tools and those resources have continued into 2020. I should mention that in 2018, the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative moved from the mayor's office under the guidance of Invest Atlanta, which is the economic development agency for the city of Atlanta. We think that that is a really, really strong position for the initiative because, once again, we drive economic development for the city on a very granular basis driven by women. I want to talk about how we do this programming and what sorts of resources we put in place for women. We do this using a 4-pillar process. And those 4 pillars include business analysis, learning and leadership development, strategic partnerships, and funding opportunities. With business analysis, we really try to focus on strategy. I'm a firm believer that as a woman and as a startup, you need to employ strategy in all of your moves because life is different for women and we have to be strategic about it. It's not just about going as fast as we can, as hard as we can all of the time. So that business strategy pillar involves lots of tools around business model canvassing, SWOT development, competitive analysis, personality evaluation to know what type of leader you are, and all of these things help you identify your strengths. They also help you know what your weaknesses are so they can become opportunities. And that leads into our second pillar, learning and leadership development. In learning and leadership development, we do everything startup, from startup legal to startup mental health to startup marketing to startup operations, startup tech. Because as a CEO, as a budding CEO, you need all of those tools in your wheelhouse in order to succeed and to scale your business. We also engage many members of our community, from the business leaders and community leaders, to help us execute on those workshops with our entrepreneurs. And that goes a long way for us in terms of helping to develop social capital for our entrepreneurs and to make sure that the community knows who the next women on the rise are. This leads into strategic partnerships. I know that a lot of people love to talk about entrepreneurship and they love to talk about working with women, but sometimes they don't know if they can give us that $1 million contract. So we're trying to take that off the table, because when you involve the community and the business leaders of Atlanta and the greater region and the globe for that matter, people see the work and they know that these women are prepared and ready to soar into, $1 million annual revenues, which is one of our goals. And then that last pillar is around funding opportunities. We feel like, you can attract capital when you're doing good business. And again, as the program is designed, it's designed to make sure that all the foundations are in place for these women so that they can go and scale their business to have tremendous impact on the city of Atlanta, the region, and the world. Now I'd like to talk about why we do this. And I think I've touched on this with a number of my comments, but from a broad perspective, I believe and we believe that women equal good business. 22%. 22% of women of color in Georgia are either unemployed or marginally attached to unemployment or to employment. And this statistic is garnered from Invest Atlanta in our work with Bloomberg. And it's data that was culled from 2020 in the wake of this global pandemic. This is a pretty alarming number because I believe that the unemployment rate for Georgia right now is 5%, but when you put women and women of color on top of it, it's 22%, which means 1 in 4 of us is in a vulnerable position. I think that begins to frame why we're doing this work, but I want to make sure that my comments are optimistic and that the audience is optimistic as well when we end this conversation. So let's go to something a little bit more optimistic. 1.9 trillion. 1.9 trillion is the total revenue generated from women-owned businesses, according to American Express. That's a tremendous amount of economic fire. And it's something that we should celebrate and something that all women should know that we are a valuable part of the economy, and we should own that value. 21%. 21% is the increase in number of women-owned businesses in the last 5 years. We're in good company. You're in good company. And this is another one of the reasons that we've got the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative here in Atlanta. 10% more. Women-owned startups achieve more revenue, 10% more revenue in a 5-year period when compared to their male counterparts. Again, your value has been documented. We always create value. And for the women in the audience, your peers know, don't let anyone take your value away from you. Women mean good business. And lastly, 12 trillion. $12 trillion is added to the global GDP, are expected to be added to the global GDP by 2025 when we advance women's equality, according to McKinsey. So all of these things are really, really inspiring and supporting numbers to help us understand why women mean good business and why the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative exists. I'd like to say that I'm proud that our cohort, that our cumulative cohort numbers speak to $2.1 million in capital investment for the women of WE and over 370 jobs created for the city of Atlanta to date. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about my personal story. As many of you know, I am an entrepreneur as well. I was actually in the very first inaugural cohort of WE. And what I will tell you is that it has been a long journey. I started my corporate career at Sony Entertainment and moved through business affairs, marketing, and international affairs work. And in 2005, I jumped out into what I call the wild, wild west of startups. I did everything from creating a podcast, moving to Mexico and developing software that was focused on what we know as Spotify and Facebook now, managed electronic DJs and sports figures, brokered deals with the likes of ESPN and Sony. And I had some success, but I didn't have the success that I had anticipated. I really felt that I was not managing or leading a global agency, but more of kind of a mom and pop business. And as a solopreneur, I had not achieved $1 million in annual revenue. It was not the reason that I went to business school, to kind of be this solopreneur, um, muddling through the landscape of startups. But I recognized that I had some deficiencies, that I needed to fill some gaps in my business foundations, because those foundations were lacking. And it's kind of why I was muddling through. And that's one of the reasons that I was able to engage with the General Atlanta startup community and the WE program itself. But the big lesson from my personal experience for me, and I hope for the audience, is that you find your wins in your failures. And the second big lesson, equally as important, is that you find your confidence in your competence. I'm going to say those two things again because they're really, really important. You find your wins in your failures, and failures is in quotes, and your competence drives your confidence. I think when I speak about being an African American or a woman in this space, one of the things that I've learned is that if you're marginalized, that can help and that can help prepare you to scale the tallest of buildings, because you work harder, because you have to. And if you can keep that perspective, then your journey doesn't feel as long or as painful, but feels very purposeful. I would also say that being the only woman in a room, or the only woman of color in the room, helps you to claim the spotlight. Or as the kids say, it helps you to claim your flowers. And so those things can be embraced, and they can be used as an advantage, as I've learned, or that's how I see it. As an executive now with Invest Atlanta leading the WE organization, I would say to women, this opportunity was afforded to me because I kept going. And it only takes one person to believe in you for you to get to your next milestone. So always get a second opinion. And if that second opinion is not in alignment with your needs, get a third and a fourth until you find your tribe. And that tribe will support you for your success.
Now we'd like to introduce our honorary guest speaker, Consul General Michael Jerobsoff. He is the Consul General of Belgium here in Atlanta, and he came to Atlanta in August of 2020. So I hope you have enjoyed your stay here in Atlanta thus far, even though we haven't been able to get out due to COVID. But welcome to Atlanta, and we can't wait to have you and hear you speak on what your country is doing to advance gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Houston. Thank you also to the previous speakers. I must say that since I arrived in Atlanta, I've been very impressed by what the city is doing for diversity in all its dimensions. Thank you for giving the space to speak today as a Belgian, but also as a man. Not to give any kind of specific male position on this crucial topic, but because sometimes you can get the impression that some consider this gender equality as being a women's issue, which is absolutely wrong in my eyes. 2 years ago, we had a Minister of Finance, and he wrote a book called The Age of Women, Why Feminism Also Liberates Men. I will come back to it in a little bit. So I am from Belgium, and I will briefly touch on a couple of measures and policies that my country has adopted towards gender equality. And I will focus on those which I find especially interesting, especially helpful towards that goal, but also some measures that can be maybe replicated in other countries. And I will start with politics because, I mean, the Beijing conference has been mentioned. Of course, the Beijing conference in its plan of action recognized that full participation of women in the political decision making was absolutely crucial. And we were coming from very far, I must say. During the just after the World War II, we had only not even 3% of women in our parliament. And by the 80s, so 40 years later, we had slowly climbed to 5%. So it was pretty obvious that just a natural evolution would not cut it. And so in a run-up to the Beijing conference, we adopted the first regulation. It was still modest at the time. It was just that 1/3 of the political list for the elections had to be composed of women. Actually, it was at least 1/3 of each sex, but everybody knows that it was at least 1/3 of women. And it made the representation of women in our parliament jump to 20%, but it was still not enough. And so in the 90s and in 2002, actually, we took a raft of legislation, much more ambitious. We needed full parity on the list and not 10 men in the 10 first places and 10 women in the 10 last places, as some tried to do in the very beginning. But no, we have a perfect alternate, women, men, women, when we need to have 1 out of 2 each position on the list to be a woman and a man. And this also led to some relatively spectacular results. We have now 45% of women in our parliament. It's still not parity, but we are going there. And do you remember this Minister of Finance, which I was mentioning earlier? He's now on Prime Minister, and he kind of lived by the principles he was writing about in his book, because we do have the first paritarian government. So in our current government, we have as many women as we do have men, and our Minister of Defense, Foreign Affairs, who is our former Prime Minister, and Cooperation and Development are all women. So Belgium is represented outside of Belgium by 3 very powerful women. Another topic now briefly is economy. Has been mentioned how important it is, of course, as well. And I will focus on the gender pay gap. We still have a gender pay gap. We have a gender pay gap of around 5.5%, almost 6%, but it is half what it was 10 years ago. And how did we get there? And we are in the top 4 at EU level. It's also EU policy. It's not only Belgium doing this, but at European level, we also have lots of measures being taken. And how did we do this in Belgium? Reducing slowly the gender pay gap to a more acceptable level. We followed the path of transparency. We have a system that forces reporting at all levels, including the level of company. Individual company have to report about their pay structure, whether what's the pay structure is for male, for female employees, and they also have to negotiate agreements. And so in Belgium, salary agreements are negotiated between the companies and the trade unions. There have to be measures taken specifically to reduce the gender pay gap. And it has been very efficient. So of course, not the only measures. We have also a very powerful childcare, early childhood, so that the women can go back to work quicker. And we have also parental leave that is compulsory also for fathers. So fathers have to stay 3 weeks for the moment, soon 4 weeks home, because we've noticed that when the young father, take care of the baby, it changes a lot of things afterwards, also empowering the women to go back to work quicker. One last point is the society. We have a very ambitious plan of action to fight against gender-based violence in many dimensions. Forced marriages, so-called honor crimes as well, partner violence, and female genital mutilation. And we have structures in place. We train the police force. We have welcome center where all the victims of gender violence can go and really be taken care of in all the dimension, medical dimension, psychological, legal dimension, find a safe place to stay, etc. And this also has made a lot of difference. I won't have time today to go towards what Belgium is doing at the international level also. It is a horizontal priority of Belgium on the international stage. We fight, for instance, and we implement the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, a text that unfortunately the USA hasn't ratified yet. But I would not want to give the impression that everything is going well, actually. So we are fighting on the international stage, but then we started looking at what we were doing in my own ministry, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And to our horror, we noticed that only 10% of our ambassadors are women. This is a contradiction, and this is absolutely unacceptable for a country that wants really to fight for gender equality. And so now we have a female minister, and we have an ambitious plan of action, and we have a team fighting from within, and I'm part of that team, because again, it's not a women's problem to reach gender parity also at the level of ambassador. And there are many measures that have been taken, like for instance, no selection panel with only men. That was still the case a couple of years ago, that the selection for young diplomats could be a panel with only men. This is also changing. And another measure that has been taken recently is that we don't participate anymore to panels, the panels where we have only men speakers. But luckily, it was absolutely not the case today, of course. And again, I've been delighted to be part of this summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Consul General Jeroshov. We really appreciate you sharing the great work that Belgium is doing. And as you stated, we do need men. Women need men. We need men not only to love and support us, but to be advocates, to be mentors, to be sponsors, and to really affirm and support us so that we can achieve our fullest potential. Thank you for sharing that and being a part of this summit. Also, thank you for telling us about the great work that Belgium is doing in making sure that women leaders are represented in government, and also dealing with the gender pay gap in order to make sure that we close those gaps, and also what you're doing on the international stage. I cannot wait to see those women ambassadors across the world in just a few years. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you will continue to be supportive of women and our efforts to obtain gender equality. Next, we're going to begin we're going to have Lady Sandra Williams, who is a Governor General's Goodwill Ambassador and President of Antigua and Bermuda, Barbuda China Friendship Association. She is president and founder of the Halo Foundation, and she is sharing a video to kick off our roundtable discussions, which will be followed immediately after her video.
Our planet Earth is a vast, amazing space home to 7.7 billion people, approximately half of whom are female. And yet, women have struggled to attain equality for centuries, fighting for equal pay, equal rights, and equal recognition. The focus has never been on surpassing the achievement level of our male counterparts or minimizing the input of men in the economic, fiscal, environmental, and social successes of each country worldwide. Instead, in some corners of the world, women are simply struggling to ensure that there is a seat for them at the table and that they are able to care responsibly for themselves and their families, while contributing to the development of the community at large. How can we ensure that collectively we pursue gender equity and equality throughout this unprecedented pandemic and into the 2030 United Nations benchmark year for attaining sustainability? If we look at the history of Caribbean women, for example, we see the progress from the early 1900s to today. It is significant to note that Caribbean women played an important part in service during World War II, from 1939 to 1945. In their book, West Indian Women at War, Ben Bousquet and Colin Douglas stress that during that time, a woman's place was in the war, and that out of necessity, women were slowly admitted into the armed forces and other bastions of male employment. This shows us that in times of crisis, women are expected to perform in wider roles in order to stabilize conditions and normalize the societies in which they reside. Like World War II, COVID-19 has been a global crisis of epic proportions. The incidents of gender-based violence have increased. Education has suffered due primarily to the closure of schools. Unemployment figures have dramatically climbed. Non-emergency health issues for women have been largely under-resourced as the focus has shifted to minimizing the damaging impact of the pandemic. And poverty indicators pinpoint that there is widespread and extreme hardship throughout most countries of the world. In a statement dated May 28, 2020, the United Nations Sustainable Development Group for Latin America and the Caribbean referred to COVID-19 as a crisis of unparalleled magnitude and proportion, and highlighted that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted, either directly or indirectly, millions of people in Latin America and the Caribbean, and refugees and migrants, especially women and children, are the most affected. We should also note comments provided by Constanza Tabush through UN Women in January of this year. The latest data shows that the pandemic is poised to push 47 million women and girls into extreme poverty, increasing the total number of women and girls living in extreme poverty to 435 million. The projections also show that this number will not revert to pre-pandemic levels until 2030. We must consider the findings of a report commissioned by UNICEF and UNDP, released in the third quarter of 2020. The pandemic is setting back progress made in the past 2 decades to improve women and children's health in these regions. So, how can we collectively help to shape the future of our women and girls in both the current and post-pandemic environments? As president of the Halo Foundation registered in Antigua and Barbuda, the youth team, Generation Y, comprised of 80% female volunteers, has been playing its small part to alleviate suffering and damage. The initiatives include teaming up with a local psychologist to provide free assessment and initial counseling for young people with mental health issues. 50% of the cases to date have been girls seeking treatment. The second initiative has been a continuous Big Sister program, where young disadvantaged females are mentored by the young ladies of Halo Generation Y. And finally, the female youth team has devised an action plan for addressing women's health issues. An outreach project which is scheduled to commence shortly. They will be looking first at polycystic ovarian syndrome, a condition which displays symptoms such as obesity, stress, and depression. Tamisha Lee, president of Jamaican Network of Rural Women Producers, commented that a post-COVID-19 world will require women who are robust, flexible, and empowered to think and act. We need to continue to give women and girls the opportunity to make their voices heard. I had the good fortune to be one of the judges at a recent International Women's Day debate competition organized by the Ministry of Social Transformation in Antigua and Barbuda. And it is this type of activity that helps to provide young women with the courage and competence to face a future with all its challenges and uncertainties. On the global stage, the efforts to advance the gender equality agenda for women must not only be continued, but should intensify in order to reverse the retrogressive effects of COVID-19. The question of women in leadership should be prioritized at all high-level meetings, including the G7, COP26, and Commonwealth Heads of Government. In a recent speech to mark International Women's Day, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Baroness Patricia Scotland, remarked that there is sufficient data to show that out of a sample of countries with similar socio-demographic and economic characteristics that were seen as important in the transmission of COVID-19, countries headed by women did considerably better than those headed by their male counterparts. The Secretariat's guide on measures for advancing and enabling women's political representation in the Commonwealth is expected to become available in 2021 and should prove a useful resource in the journey for progressive female leadership. Every country in the world should pursue legal reform or enforcement where the lives and livelihood of women and girls are marginalized in areas such as citizenship and the informal economy of unpaid work, domestic violence, sexual offenses, health, equality in remuneration, and equal opportunity employment. Continuous research is needed in order to monitor the success of strategy and the advancement of the agenda. This should include studies executed by government entities, universities, women's organizations, and religious institutions. The UN Women and UNDP COVID-19 Global Gender Response Tracker will generate a vast amount of gender-driven data across 206 countries. Benchmarking and rating are necessary scorecards in order to meet gender-related objectives. Education is key to ensuring effective leadership training for women and girls in both formal and community settings. The use of technology in providing solutions to critical issues such as poverty alleviation is encouraged. Electronic cash transfers for project funding is a good example of how women can be positively and directly impacted by technological advancement. Similarly, social media and other electronic platforms provide the medium for targeted message delivery and awareness, and we should continue to voice our collective and poignant mission to dissolve the inequality between men and women in our effort to make the world a more peaceful, protected, and productive space. Last but not least, investment in projects which aim to benefit women is critical. The general belief is that men tend to invest while women tend to donate. A UN Women article indicates that in 2021, for every 100 men who are poor, there are 118 impoverished women. This implies that 54% of the world's poor are women. The situation has improved as in 2004, just 17 years ago, new gender studies from Cameroon and the Caribbean cites women as being 70% of the world's poor. Barbados' first female prime minister, the Honorable Mia Mottley, says, "As we are now seeing with global responses to the COVID-19 crisis, the international multilateral system is faltering. There is a dearth of moral leadership, a resurgence of nationalism, and competition between nations, all struggling to deal with their own problems. Now is not the time for division. Now is not the time for exclusion. It is the time for togetherness and collective advancement, and the nations of the world need to embrace the vision of a brighter and better future for all." In reference to COVID-19, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "We are in this together and we will get through this together. Let us ensure that gender parity issues are resolved by 2030 in order to balance the equation of poverty, justice, and success, with women and girls playing a greater part in the global narrative towards achievement." May I take this opportunity to commend the organizers on this initiative, which is undoubtedly an important think tank and discussion arena for the empowerment of women. I wish you all a productive conference as we look forward to an even more prosperous future for women and girls in each of our respective countries.
Thank you so much, Lady Sandra, for that information regarding the status of women across the world and your efforts in order to advance gender equality. Next, we're really excited about our panels. We have two panels today for our summit, and our first panel is going to be moderated by Dr. Caroline Opende. She is the founder and CEO of the NGO Whisperer, which is a consulting company with a global reach that provides technical support to nonprofits and social enterprises. And she is joining us from Manchester, United Kingdom. Thank you, Dr. Caroline.
It is a great honor and a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much, Dr. Houston. Thank you so much to the founder of the International Women's Think Tank, Dr. Brenda Morant, for this collaboration here, and all the distinguished guests and honorary guests who have spoken today. In the roundtable discussion that we are going to take on now, we're going to discuss the well-being of women and children, focusing on the impact of COVID-19 on women and children and our future. To give you a bit of a background of what we're going to discuss today, recent reports from the World Health Organization, the UN Women, and the International Labour Organization on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic globally has shown that women and children have been disproportionately and differently affected compared to men. Indeed, these reports have indicated that the pandemic has only exacerbated gaps that already existed in the social, political, and economic systems at the household level and the wider community. In this panel, we will discuss the impact of the COVID-19 on women and children as it relates to the Sustainable Development Goals number 1 on no poverty, Sustainable Development Goal number 2, zero hunger, Goal 3 on good health and well-being, Goal 4 on quality education, Goal 5, gender equality, Goal 6 on clean water and sanitation, Goal 8 on decent work and economic growth, Goal 10 on reduced inequalities, Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, which is the last one. So out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, this roundtable will focus on 9 of them, which directly affect women and girls and children. I would like to introduce to you our panel speakers. We have 6 of them, and I would like to introduce Dr. Angela M. Wakwea. She is the Senior Director of Health Equity Rights Team at CARE at Atlanta, Georgia. The second speaker in this panel is Ms. Colette Cartman, Community Development Specialist at Microsoft Atlanta, Georgia. The third one is Ms. Medina S. Ali. She is the president and co-founder, Safe PC Cloud Atlanta, co-lead for the Women in Technology WIT Network, and Microsoft Business Partner Channel in Atlanta, Georgia. Next, we will have Ms. Michelle White. She is the principal of Western High School, Baltimore, Maryland. Our fifth speaker today is going to be Ms. Sherry Ann Taylor, the Director of Student Behavioral Health and Wellbeing at Clayton County Public Schools System in Atlanta, Georgia. And the last of our speakers today in this panel is going to be Chinita Allen. She is the founder and education and advocacy consultant in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a panel of dynamic, great leaders from different aspects of our work, and I'm going to let them go straight into a session where each and every one of those speakers will give a 5-minute presentation on lessons learned and best practices that focus on the impact of COVID-19 on women and children. To start us off, I will have Dr. Angela M. Wakwea from CARE. Dr. Angela, welcome.
Excellent. Again, as Dr. Opinde said, I am the Senior Director for CARE's Health Equity and Rights Team based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm currently presenting from Uganda today. I was born in Uganda, studied at Makerere University Medical School and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. The Health and Equity and Rights Team is particularly committed to working with communities and reaching hard to reach and vulnerable populations and addressing inequities. We work with government systems, establishing social accountability and governance mechanisms, building the capacity of frontline health workers, working through community structures, and engaging men, and other community gatekeepers, addressing gender inequities, and expanding spaces for dialogue and negotiation between the community and health delivery systems. What do we do at CARE? Our vision is a world of hope, inclusion, and social justice, where poverty has been overcome and all people live in dignity and security. Our focus is particularly on women and girls. We have them at the center of all that we do because we know that we cannot overcome poverty until all people have equal rights and opportunities. Our mission is to work around the globe, and currently CARE with all our CARE international partners are in over 100 countries. We work around the globe to save lives, defeat poverty, and achieve social justice. Those are three main areas of our mission. CARE contributes to lasting impact at scale in poverty eradication and social justice in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. Gender equality, which is SDG 5, sits at the heart of our programmatic ambitions and radiates throughout all our work. That is what we are known for at CARE, our gender work, especially in relation to girls and women. We're actually in the process of finalizing our Vision 2030, where we are committed to measurably changing lives, aligning our organizational goals along the SDGs for each of our key impact areas of gender, humanitarian action, which is SDG 1, 5, and 11, right to food, water, and nutrition, that's SDG 2, 5, and 6, climate justice, which is SDGs 5, 7, and 13, and of course, the right to health, SDG 3 and 5. Overall, these will contribute to overcoming poverty, SDG 1, with the goal of CARE and our partners supporting over 200 million people from the most vulnerable and excluded communities in the world so that they are able to overcome poverty and social justice. CARE has a dual mandate. We work in humanitarian or fragile settings as well as more or less stable or development settings. Our humanitarian directions are gender and localization with nexus approaches. COVID has only underscored the importance of this nexus of development and working in fragile settings. As an organization that puts gender at the center of all our work, our core emergency sector in terms of what we do as CARE in emergency settings is to work on sexual, reproductive health and rights. As a team, our health equity and rights team has 4 distinctive areas of focus. One of them is strengthening local health systems and community-based organizations. The second is supporting marginalized population groups, especially adolescents, to exercise their right to health. A third is to increase access to quality health services, including sexual and reproductive health and rights services in both humanitarian and fragile settings. And then the fourth is to prepare and respond to public health emergencies, whether it be Ebola, COVID-19, the HIV pandemic, or the like. One of our key methodologies, which we have provided as a resource to everybody, is that we utilize a certain methodology to assess gender imbalances and gender issues. And this methodology is called a rapid gender analysis. CARE was the first out of the gate to release a global rapid gender analysis related to COVID-19. A rapid gender analysis provides information about the different needs, capacities, and coping strategies of women, girls, boys, and men. It does this in part by examining the roles and relationships between women, girls, boys, and men, either before a development project or in an emergency setting. A rapid gender analysis is built up progressively and provides an initial analysis of gender relations in which it is critical to do that to ensure programming is responsive to vulnerable or marginalized populations, particularly those facing the greatest injustices. So we have a presence in over 100 countries. We've reached over 65 million people through very many projects. Our health response during COVID has focused on 4 areas: protect and support frontline health workers, activate communities to stop the spread of COVID-19, ensure access to sexual and reproductive health, including gender-based violence response services, and fourth, shield and stand with women, girls, and the most marginalized. I will end here by asking us all to celebrate Women's History Month and CARE's 75th anniversary by watching a beautiful video that we put together that you can find on YouTube by Googling Idina Menzel, that famous singer, and Chaka Khan. And it's called I Am Every Woman. So if you Google I Am Every Woman by Idina Menzel and Chaka Khan, we will celebrate Women's History Month and CARE's 75th anniversary together. I'll also encourage everyone to visit our website, www.care.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Angela Wakwea, joining us from Uganda, East Africa. So honored to have you today as you share the 4 areas that you work to support COVID-19 recovery and rebuild, looking at frontline healthcare workers, the communities, access to sexual and reproductive health, and also focusing on women and girls and children. Next, we will have Ms. Colette Cotman from Microsoft to share lessons learned on the work that they do with respect to the well-being of women and children. Ms. Colette.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dr. Opinde. I'm so happy to be here, and I would like to speak on a couple of things. So first and foremost, I want to just share my excitement for being a part of this event and thank Dr. Morant for the invitation to speak. I am the Community Development Specialist in the Atlanta area for Microsoft, representing our virtual stores team today. And one of the wonderful things that I have the privilege of doing is serving our community with the programs that were developed to ensure our ability to move forward in this technology age successfully. And so 2 of the programs that I support include our customer success trainings, as well as our community development workshops. And I want to share that Microsoft has recently committed a significant investment in the city of Atlanta and will continue to invest in our programming here in the state of Georgia, in the United States, and around the world. So in the process of explaining some of the programs that we have, I'd like to share a little bit about the way Microsoft as a whole has a global initiative and a global responsibility to supporting women and children, particularly in response to some of the difficulties that have asserted themselves around the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you'll give me just a moment to share my screen, I'm going to just go through a couple of our sites and show you just what we're doing in that space. So the first one that you see here is what we call the Global Diversity and Inclusion Program. And inside Microsoft, we have quite a few programs. And I'm going to attempt to scroll here. For some reason, my scroll bar is not showing up. But what you can see is that we have some 2020 highlights here. And essentially, it harkens back to the idea of we are all in this together. And our Chief Diversity Officer, Lindsay Ray McIntyre, has ensured that we have the opportunity to highlight the challenges of diverse groups, including women, women of color, individuals with disabilities, and families that are struggling through this pandemic. Many of us have been called home to take care of our family members who are ill, or children who are no longer able to go to school, so they're being homeschooled. And these women at home who are now teachers are often working as well as taking care of older family members. So Microsoft has done a lot of work to support all of the women who are doing double and triple duty. The next one I wanted to share is this wonderful article on women inspiring change in technology. And when you think about Microsoft on a grand scale, This is probably not the picture that you'd imagine, but there are incredible women doing extraordinary work in the Microsoft technology field, as well as connecting technology to cultures around the world. Next, I just wanted to highlight, we have a program for the Women's History Month, and it involves every female from the age of 4 all the way up to 85. And one that I wanted to particularly highlight is women leading the way. Fireside chat with Jocelyn Mangan and our LinkedIn board session teaching women how to maximize their network presence to become members of that boardroom and take those leadership seats that are integral to decision making in companies and organizations. And this is the one that I wanted to share. It's called It's Her. This month is Women's History Month, as we know, and we are celebrating. We are celebrating women of all ages, all nationalities, all persuasions in terms of gender, and we are celebrating contributions of women. So when we say it's her, it's her. And when it's her, it's all of us. We flourish when we support our women. This slide just shows you some of the different workshops that we have this month celebrating women and really amplifying the voices of young women and women in business changing the game and leading the way. And then finally, I wanted to share our Women's History Month sway. And in our sway, we have multiple opportunities for women, young women, children, and older women to really feel what it's like to be a part of an organization that is forward moving and forward thinking. So I'm just going to take a couple moments to share this way. And I'll also drop this link in the chat. And then I'm going to move on and just let you all know that we are very involved in the community with our GIVE program. Microsoft incentivizes every single member of the organization to give back to the community, get involved, and share your passion. Take time to explore how you can make a difference in the community as an individual, as yourself, as a group, as a team. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and just tell you a little bit about my story and what I do as a community development specialist and training support expert. So once again, my name is Colette Cotman, and I am a training and engagement lead at Microsoft. And I feel that it is quite important to acknowledge that supporting women is also supporting children. And as a mother of 2 and a military veteran, 15 years I served in the armed forces. It was my mother and my children that continually encouraged me from nothing private to continually show my strength and share my abilities to become a sergeant and then a lieutenant and then a captain. And once I was able to stand tall on my achievement, I was then able to connect the community to our command and build those alliances and develop workshops that supported families in difficult times and bringing them together when we faced adversity. Upon leaving the military in 2015, I moved into the corporate arena as a human resource manager with a multi-billion-dollar corporation, a multi-billion-dollar company that refused to go public, Fanatics. And then I left the corporate environment to go and do some good work in the community with Hire Heroes USA, supporting military spouses and military transitioners looking to get back into the workforce. And what I learned from that experience is that it takes us all, many different organizations coming together to support those who are making the change or making an impact on a particular organization. We all need support. Following that experience, I moved into IT and project management training at what was LeaderQuest at that time and is now ACI. And once I moved into that space, I recognized that skilling is going to make the difference between a woman's ability to take care of herself, take care of her children in the event that she's left to do that on her own. And so that became my charter. And to this day, I'm focused on providing all that I can to support women skilling and developing, as well as coming together in collaboration to support one another and build the future, which are our children. So with that, I will say it is incredibly important for us to acknowledge those statistics that we've been shown that let us know that we are still, even today in 2021, marginalized in corporate America. And in spite of many opportunities to share women's leadership and women's abilities, the prevailing thought process is that somehow we need to take a back seat or a side seat. And so it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure our commitment to supporting one another and our commitment to showing our greatness is front and center. And in the process of developing my program as a community development specialist, I really wanted to connect with other women who are doing just that. So we are currently connected to over 75 programs associated with women and children, as well as education institutions and organizations that support education institutions just here in the Metro Atlanta area.
Thank you so much, Ms. Colette. Really appreciate all the insights you've given us about the work that you do as the community development specialist at Microsoft Atlanta, and insights into the work that you do with 2020 Diversity and Inclusion Report on Women of Color, Women Inspiring Change, Women Leading the Way, It's Her, and Give Home. Thank you so much. We will get back to the insights of the work that you do at the community level. But for now, we will have Ms. Medina S. Ali, the president and co-founder of Safe PC Cloud Atlanta, co-lead for Women in Technology WIT Network, Microsoft Business Partner Channel, join us to share our insights on the well-being of women and children based on what her program is implementing right now. Ms. Medina, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I really want to give a special thanks to Brenda Morant of the International Women Research Development, and also my colleague, Colette Cotman of Microsoft. Currently, I, as a woman entrepreneur, I built Safe PC Cloud. We are a IT data backup and compliance. And 3 years ago, I launched Safe PC at Tech to focus on STEM related training as well as IT certification training, focusing on women, women of color, because in technology, there are very few women and there are very few women of color in any type of leadership role. And a lot of times when we are at the table, I'm probably the only one that looks like me. So I said I needed to be a part of the change. So that's why I created the Safe PC Ed Tech division, and we began working with a lot of the local nonprofits. There are two things that I want to talk about. One of the initiatives is Accelerate Atlanta University, in which we are in partnership with Microsoft. And then I also want to talk about the Women in Technology Network. I'm the co-lead for Atlanta. We are a global Women in Technology Network organization, and we are affiliated with Microsoft. Microsoft has one of the largest business network channels of all of the competitors, such as Google and Amazon. So as a Microsoft business partner, we resell and support a lot of the Microsoft IT solutions. And so the WIT network, which was formed less than 3 years ago, has now grown to over 5,000 members, and we have over 20, we're located in over 20 countries today. So it grew very, very fast because there was such a need to support women in technology in both their careers as well as entrepreneurship. So I'm going to share my slide, or I wasn't sure if Nalet was going to show them. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen real quickly.
Medina, can you talk us through the slide even though we cannot see it?
Yes. Well, what I wanted to basically say that the Accelerate Atlanta University, the initiative of this program is to empower single parents, aspiring women in tech, disenfranchised people of color, and those adversely impacted by the effects of COVID-19 in the Atlanta metro area. Our initial target was 75 participants. We actually achieved the number of 70, and we are in the process of graduating about 60. I just wanted to state we do have men in the program. I would say men represent about 15%, but we're covering the trainings in Microsoft 365 fundamentals, Microsoft Office specialists, productivity such as Excel, Word, Outlook, and PowerPoint. We are also training women on IT help desk and administration. We have a significant amount of women in our modern desktop, modern workplace cohort. And then we have Azure fundamentals, which is comprised of cloud computing. The women in our cohort, they represent women who are homeless. They represent women who have been victims of sex trafficking. They represent women who just have had a baby, who have been laid off, who have, excuse me, can someone mute? Thank you. They represent a wide range of women who have been impacted. In a recent study by McKinsey and Lean In, 1 out of 4 women have recently been displaced because of COVID. And the reason is because of COVID, they had to end up becoming, teachers at home, homeschooling their kids. They left because they became the caregivers. There were so many different reasons why women have been impacted by this pandemic. And it is so important that organizations such as this continue to focus on the needs of women. And so the initiative that we're doing with Accelerate Atlanta is to get more women in technology, get more women with digital skills and training so they can become employable. And that's the other thing, because of the certain industries that have been impacted in the industry, further women are being displaced because they tended to be in the retail and restaurant, and those industries have been heavily displaced because of COVID. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We will have another session where you will share more. And for now, just to reiterate what you have shared, the accelerated University of Atlanta work that you're doing and the cohort that's just about to graduate, we applaud you for the work that you have done, and also for the women in technology to help women, especially women of color, to be more employable. We applaud you for that work because we know when women are empowered, it is good for business, it is good for communities. Thank you so much. And next we are going to have Miss Michelle White, the principal of Western High School from Baltimore, Maryland.
I want to start again by thanking the International Women's Think Tank and UN organizations for granting this wonderful opportunity to glean from truly inspirational leaders who are working to create equity and empowerment for women and for girls. I am proud to represent Western High School of Baltimore City. We are the oldest all-girls public school in our nation. Western has been at the center of women's equity and empowerment since its founding in 1844. Our mission is to provide a college preparatory education for young women using rigorous and relevant curriculum infused with real-world experience, because we want our girls to emerge as socially responsible leaders, equipped with problem-solving skills that will enable them to succeed in a 21st century global economy. Our core values are scholarship, leadership, character, and service. There are many benefits to all girls schools. We know that our graduates are more academically engaged, demonstrate higher science, self-confidence, display higher levels of cultural competency, express stronger community involvement, and exhibit increased political engagement. Western enjoys a reputation as one of, we call it the big three high schools in Baltimore, which consistently demonstrate high achievement and ensure successful post-secondary outcomes for students. We know the difference all girls schools make in preparing young women to achieve and to change the world. I need look no further than our wonderful Dr. Brenda Morant, the founder of the International Women's Think Tank in today's event. Dr. Brenda Morant is a graduate of Western High School. She is a shining example of the power of a Western foundation. But even with the many programs we offer to support our students, we find ourselves challenged by the effects of COVID-19 on women and children. Our population of 1,234 girls is composed of 90% African American students and 96% minority. Next year, our poverty rate is projected at 84%. Still pre-COVID, we have consistently overcome obstacles of poverty via the wraparound services we provide with mental health supports, a Big Sister, Little Sister program, and a plethora of extracurricular activities and leadership opportunities for our young women to thrive. We were the hub of support, and it has become extremely evident the difference that Western has made in the lives of our young women during this pandemic, when they cannot be in the building with us and they cannot readily access all of the supports. We see a decline in some of the areas, and we are working to find creative solutions to combat some of the challenges that I will share with you in a moment. But pre-COVID, we produced graduation rates of 99% and college acceptance rates of over 90%, which far exceed Baltimore, Maryland, and national averages. During COVID, it's been challenging, again, to fully provide those wraparound services. I apologize that my phone is dinging. We are finding, again, creative ways to overcome. But the big spaces that we have seen the impact of COVID has been food insecurity. Baltimore City Public Schools has done, I believe, a fine job in providing meal sites, and our state has provided the EBT cards, meal assistance for families, and that has been phenomenal. I believe the district has provided millions of meals to families. Still, it's tough to learn when you're hungry, right? We also have technology challenges as we have had to go fully virtual. We are now in the process of returning to the building, and we're in the first week of in-person learning. And that's going great, but that too has demonstrated challenge as it's shined the light on our weak infrastructure, and we're constantly getting, kicked out of Zoom, et cetera, because of the number of people who are trying to get on. So there remain technology challenges. Again, the district, demonstrated Herculean efforts in getting laptops to each of our students, hotspots, and collaborating with cable to ensure that our families had access to internet. Still, we continue to experience challenges in those places. Attendance. So in addition to the technology, we've heard it said today that women, even teenage young girls, are often the providers in the home, right? And they're the ones who are taking care of younger siblings while parents are at work. And so we see the challenge of our older siblings having to try to learn herself, but while making sure her younger siblings are logged on and learning. We've seen some of our students are moms themselves, and so they are trying to balance those competing responsibilities. And then we have seniors who can work and do work to support families, right? To help the family survive and to maintain what they have as a semblance of normalcy. And so attendance has been a challenge in this space. And then overall GPA, again, we ensure that our girls get a rigorous education and access college at very high rates. We still see those high rates, but we definitely have had to do a lot more this year to ensure that all of our girls applied to college, that they completed FAFSA, that they followed through with all of the steps that were necessary. And I'm happy to report that they are still being accepted. They're still going to highly selective universities and the schools of their choice, but we have had to do a lot to do that. And because, again, we are an all-girls school and one of Baltimore City's highest performing schools, contributing to the success that we see of Baltimore City students, it is important. The outcomes of Western High School students are important. Many of our girls go on to major in STEM fields and a lot of male-dominated areas. And so the outcomes of Western High School students are very important for this, our school, for the city, for the state, but as you all have shown today, the world, and as Brenda demonstrates, the world. And so we've seen also mental health concerns. There's a rise in depression and anxiety. There's a decrease in motivation. And so we've had to do things like adopt a school-wide mentorship program, which has really been a beautiful thing to watch as adults in the building have come to learn our girls at a deeper level and build trust and relationships that we see paying off and giving large dividends to help our girls cross the finish line and have a successful year despite the challenge.
Thank you so much, Ms. Michelle Watt. Really appreciate you sharing this. And this just reminded me of what Tata Madiba Nelson Mandela said. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And you indeed at the Western High School have changed the world, as we can see today. Sitting here in our presence is Dr. Brenda Morant, who went through your school, and she's changing the world. She's the reason we are here today. She gathered all of us together. So thank you so much. Next, we will have Cherry-Ann Taylor, Director of Student Behavioral Health and Wellbeing from Clayton County Public School System in Atlanta, Georgia. Miss Cherry-Ann Taylor, welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Dr. Morant, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this panel and also learning about all the resources that are available around me. I really appreciate the experience. I want to talk to everybody about Clayton County Public Schools. I'm very proud to be here representing the school district on this morning. I've worked in Clayton County for 13 years. It has been a very fertile ground for myself as a school psychologist. School psychology is a field that is not immersed with a lot of Black women, and being able to come to a Southern district and rise to leadership has been very rewarding for me. When I go to conferences or my face is shown on a screen. I feel very proud to be of African American and Caribbean descent, and sitting and saying to my fellow peers that I am a leader in school psychology. The new department that has been created is the work of myself and another woman in leadership, Dr. Sandra Nunez. We've been able to carve out ground in Clayton County for well-being. And being women, we are allowed to also focus on areas that we feel impact the overall growth of women in the future, our girls. Our girls are in STEM classes. There's a strong focus of girls in STEM. Actually, they're the highest enrollment in the district. The district overall focuses on all students advancing and being exposed to high-level classes. That are those classes that are honors and gifted. And in those classes, you see higher levels of women, girls. And so I'm very encouraged as I see our future in front of me. I see them in the class officer roles. When I look at the student advisory panels, I see that they're girl presidents at our high schools. I work as the grant administrator for the Students Against Destructive Decisions grant, and all of our officers are girls. And I love when we get together, sometimes we have to put our fist up and we say Black Girl Magic first, because I'm very excited to see how just in Clayton County, being able to see that we're in leadership. Our school board members are Black women. Our principals are mostly Black women. When you look at the district office and the leaders who are over math and science, those are two strong Black women as well. So I'm very proud to be in Clayton County. I'm proud of the work that Dr. Beasley has created. I feel that he's culminated those areas. He's put different key people in those areas, and he's very receptive when we come with opportunities for our girls. We have a district-wide mentorship program that's being brought to us by our Professional Learning Center, head by Dr. Gloria Duncan, another strong woman leader. And so we have outside resources coming in to speak to our girls, to push our girls. Specifically regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and our school closures, as a mother myself, having my son upstairs as I'm here presenting to you, it has been, for me, a personal experience to create opportunities for our mothers. And so our virtual well-being platforms are ran every day. There's always a school psychologist, counselor, or social worker available for students. And for mothers, we have parent workshops. Our behavior interventionists are led by a woman, Dr. Maureen Edbuna. And Dr. Edbuna makes sure that every single month we have themed workshops for our mothers, for our parents. It's just been a very rewarding opportunity working in Clayton, but COVID-19 has allowed me to see the power of Black Girl Magic. When we get together in a room and we're focused and we're determined and we're thinking to ourselves, these are our students, our girls, we have come together and made some really structured programs using technology. So again, I just thank you for your time this morning. I invite you to come look at Clayton County Public Schools, go to our website, find my department, and enjoy our calming space for yourself. It was created by women, for you as mothers. So join in, jump in, listen to some of the music, go to the aquarium, take a field trip with your kids. It's just something to do when we're in that space of needing to have that free time so that we can ourselves be energized. So please use that resource and tell your friends about it. Last thing to close, in Clayton County, we're going to utilize movie nights to give out information and materials for our schools. I see you, Clayton County class of 2014. And so I'd like, if you live in Clayton County, to join us. The first one will be April 16th at Tara Stadium. Come, enjoy a movie. It's free. Bring your family. It's something to do on a Friday night that just requires you as a mom to sit in the car and just relax. We'll also have resources available for you and your family as well. Again, thank you for your time, Dr. Moran. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. It is a great honor to have you here to share the work that you do in pioneering and creating a platform and showcasing diversity and inclusion in Clayton County through the public school system. Thank you so much. A round of applause to all our speakers on this roundtable discussion on the well-being of women and children, looking at the impact of COVID-19 on women and children and our future. And my last message to all of us is a word that I was told actually in a conversation that I had with the first female president of Mauritius, Her Excellency President Amina Gurib Fakim. In a conversation that I had with her, she told me, Caroline, gender excellence has no gender. So in everything that you do, regardless of who you are, where you come from, whether you're a minority or not, woman or not, if you are excellent, there will be a room at the table for you. And that is the message that I'm giving out to every woman and every girl out there. Happy International Women's Month to you all the way from the NGO Whisperer headquarters here in Manchester, United Kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Opende, and thank you so much for all of you who contributed to this great panel discussion today. You gave us many insights in the areas of health, education, STEM, behavioral health, community engagement, and leadership development. We want to thank each of you for sharing your expertise with our audience and participating in this roundtable discussion today. Thank you very much to Dr. Caroline Opende for moderating this important discussion today. And so next we have our second panel discussion, which is being led by Robin Jurgensen, and she is founder and CEO of Women Igniting Change Georgia. And so we're so delighted to have her as our moderator today. During this second panel, we'll be talking about entrepreneurship and partnerships. And as we've discussed throughout the day, throughout this morning's summit, entrepreneurship and economic mobility and economic independence is so important and valuable to the empowerment of women. So we're excited about this next discussion. Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy our summit. Welcome, Ms. Robin. Thank you.
Dr. Houston, again, thank you so much. In this panel, we're going to be discussing women and entrepreneurship and what it looks like to re-envision your business through partnerships and co-branding as it relates to the SDGs. You know, today more than ever, the world needs more equal, inclusive, and sustainable economies and societies in order for us to recover post-COVID-19. So specifically during this session, we'll be touching on number 5, gender equality, SDG number 8 on decent work and economic growth, and of course on number 17 on partnerships in depth. So it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce you to our incredible panel, and to ensure that we honor everyone's time, I'm going to keep these intros brief. First, we have Ms. Alicia Benson, who is the co-founder of Nirvana Tea, Inc. Their mission is perpetuating peace and harmony with every sip of tea. I love that. Alicia recognized that there needed to be a refuge for tea lovers and all individuals in pursuit of a harmonious and peaceful existence, even within hectic lifestyles. Ms. Renee Smith is the president and CTO of Parking Box Canada, a technology executive whose organization recognizes that children and family must always come first. They are a huge proponent of providing flexible work arrangements for team members who are mothers, and they champion their personal and professional development. She was the first female executive in the company in 2011, and as of this year, Parking Box Canada has over 50% of their managers that are female, which is amazing. Next, we have Ms. Farhana Hassan, who is the founder and CEO of Her Will, a groundbreaking and unique organization that uses cutting-edge digital and social media technologies to build a one-stop shop of resources to advocate for women in realizing their dreams and offering a global platform to highlight success stories. Next, we have Professor Tuli Motazela, is the founder of the Thuma Foundation based in South Africa. The Thuma Foundation aims to empower persons and communities to make democracy work for them and to defend democracy through ethical leadership, governance, and legal empowerment. And Ms. Mary Ursum is the President of Partnerships for Operation Hope. She is a 22-year member of the Hope Legacy team. She developed and launched the Hope Youth Programs, expanded the Hope Inside model nationwide, and led the global expansion in South Africa and the Middle East. Ladies, welcome. So Mary, I'd like to direct this back to you, if I may. You've spoken about cultivating partnerships with the private sector, the public sector, and with other NGOs that have similar missions. What would you recommend as ways to build a successful partnership that can become a sustainable relationship between organizations that seek to advance those global goals?
Oh, absolutely. Well, going back to my comments for a minute ago, I mean, we're talking about entrepreneurship, and we are, which includes a curriculum and includes some very tactical implementation strategy behind that. But really, what this is a opportunity for economic equity through a social justice lens. So I think in assessing partners, large partners, small partners, in various pockets of where the desired target group of women that you want to reach, it's looking at those that have that similar benchmark from Operation Hope standpoint. And then we are very keenly aware that what we do every day, all day, even if it's for millions of people, there are millions and millions of more. So we always approach partnerships from a very collaborative standpoint, but we have a strategy behind it as well. So, for example, I mentioned in my remarks that we are working on in a very empowering, simple, but a way that will promote extreme advancement for women is through digitization. And so what we have done over the last 6 months in particular is targeted some tech companies that, particularly in the US over the last year, have looked at ways that they can promote social justice on a higher level. And we're working with PayPal, for example, because they have very specific content that we can incorporate in, but they also get it. They also understand what this is about and what the opportunities are. We launched a partnership with Shopify, one of the biggest online e-commerce platforms in the world. And they, knowing that you can just say, okay, it's great, you should put your business online and you should sell your product online, but unless you have the tools and the resources, that's what we found. Operation Hope, our special sauce is education, and we connect. And those are the two things that we do and we do well. But Shopify, this partnership, a 10-year partnership, they invested $130 million to take 1 million businesses onto a platform where they'll do their website. They'll help them transition from selling. We have women that were selling incense and candles on the street in Harlem. And now they're on an e-commerce platform because of Shopify. And they'll even, after the first sale, they'll even give them a line of credit. So we really work with them to develop something that's holistic. So we look for gaps, we look for opportunities, and we look on how we can scale. Scale is critically important, but scale can also mean working with an NGO in a community, serving a smaller group of women, but we always look at how can that model be something that we can take someplace else, whether we're in Cape Town or whether we are in Atlanta or anywhere across the board. From a public sector, we know that the partnerships can be highly detailed and somewhat complex, but again, looking at similar missions and knowing that resources are there. So it's always about strategic alignment. It's always about, at the end of the day, you're going back to your core values, and we don't partner with anyone that doesn't share that core value of economic equity through social justice. And then we design it from there. But I do know that, everybody needs to win at the end of the day. The one thing Operation Hope does not do is we're a nonprofit organization and you are a for-profit entity, and can you give us a contribution? Of course there's a part of it, and philanthropy is a part of it, but we develop something strategic with a long game so that our partners are reaching their goals and objectives, and Operation Hope are reaching our goals and objectives.
Farhana, I'd like to go to you next, please. You have cultivated national and international relationships with both profit and nonprofit organizations across the US, Asia, Europe, and South America. Can you share your perspective, please?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Robin, for moderating this amazing event. and to UNA USA for inviting me to this program and this amazing summit organized by IWTT and RC Greater Atlanta. Very honored and a pleasure to be in this company. I wanted to take just a moment to answer your question about my organization, Her Will, and what we're doing, so I can answer your question about partnerships and how we're making things happen. So we wanted to build world's number one or one consolidated digital place for women to be successful, a space with resources to be successful in all stages of life and leadership. So, and we wanted to get the women out of their social barriers and society dictated gender-based roles to contribute intellectually and professionally in leadership in public and private sectors outside of their homes. So that's the goal that we're striving toward. And our mission is to, our cornerstones of Her Will is to educate, empower, and elevate. And with that, we have built 6 pillars, 6 promises, and through them, under those current pillars, we are delivering programs and building different digital platforms, software as a service, platforms for women to be understand that they are still subhumans in many parts of the world, and the time for the only woman to be at the table is now over. Time to be proud of that situation is not something we need to encourage and celebrate. It's time to question why is the 50% of the population at doing everything we're supposed to be doing. So in order to do that, we started doing webinars and programs with subject matter experts leading them and donating their times and expertise and leading the programs by themselves to go to the root causes of the issues. Why are we here? Why has the equality not been achieved? Why will it take 208 years to achieve equality in the United States? And when I saw that number at the World Economic Forum, I was enraged. And if this is the case at the United States, then what is going to happen to the rest of the world? It's going to take a millennium at a minimum to get where we want to go. So and based on my personal experience, the way I grew up, I had to hear no's all over the world because I was a girl. I was never treated as a full human being. Nobody else questioned. I had to question. And then I was lucky enough to come to the United States. I made my life there and made an amazing career here. Time in, time out, I faced the same implicit biases. It wasn't that awful, but it was an amazing journey. It liberated me. But also, there are subtle gaps that I would still like to take the opportunity and fill. And that's my life's mission. So I wanted to say that before I go into partnership. If you look at our programs in the last 10 months, we have accomplished so much, and everyone asked me that, how did you do all of this? And when you look at the world as your resource, as your playground, and get your resource from anywhere in the world, with women, men and women similarly passionate as you are with your cause, then I think with your pure intention, you get results. And the power of pack, the power of partnership comes right then and there. And that's where I found that with amazing partnerships, we were ready to invest and put all our energy in building systems that we found our partners doing better than we could ever do, and leverage them to do the same thing that we want to do. It's the end result that we're looking for, the common goal. Operation Hope. Mary, it's so nice to be with you at the panel. Operations Hope, and I need to tell you this story. I was exposed to your program, the entrepreneurial training program, and I thought, you know what, before I go for the partnership, I want to check it out myself. So I went through the whole 8-week course by myself, whether I am a financial coach as well, and I teach entrepreneurs and leaders as well. But I did that myself, went through the whole certification process, and I was blown away with the power that you have, with the amount of energy this coach that I was in the class of, she is putting by herself. I do not know how she does it. And the thoroughness of the whole program, I do not, it's going to be an excuse for someone to not be successful after that class. So I had to tell you this, I was amazingly, it was a life open experience, because with all our MBAs and the career accomplishments we have, we forgot the basics. So it was back to basics plus, and she made it just unbelievably interesting with other people in the program, other organizations in the program. So yeah, that's the power of partnership with a common goal, with the right intentions. We get there faster and farther.
I love that. Farhana, thank you so much. So we have partnerships even within the panel, which that's amazing. I love that. Professor Tooley, I'd like to go back to you. As an organization that facilitates democracy dialogues, engages in advocacy, and champions accessibility, how has the pandemic impacted the people that you serve?
Thank you. The impact has been similar to the impact that has just been mentioned by my colleague who just spoke. Firstly, when it comes to women, there's the problem of the merger of the workplace and the home. So many of them have struggled with the fact that they have to function efficiently like all men, like everyone else, whilst they had to provide homeschooling, because during the pandemic, education went online and children had to learn from home. But the worst part is that also if you have a very gendered home or a home that is structured in terms of the old gender stereotypes, the men also became a burden, in that now that they're working from home, they're expecting breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea and dinner, which ordinarily that would have been provided in the workplace. So it's been just an overwhelming amount of work, leading to fatigue, and then anxiety, leading to the problems around mental health. And then with a lot of the communities that we're dealing with, I said it was township, rural areas, and young people. The pandemic led to lockdowns, and the lockdowns locked them out of the economy. Those who didn't have digital devices, digital data, and connectivity found themselves cut off from the world. And on their behalf, we've been engaging with the right authorities about assistance. In fact, one of the programs that we eventually conceived is a digital inclusion drive. We started, in fact, it started accidentally. One of the women came in our WhatsApp group that is managed by South African Women in Dialogue. They're all about women entrepreneurship and about women and security. So she put in this SOS saying she's isolated. She only has a cell phone. She has no data. She has no laptop. Can someone help? So with Tumor, we normally have laptops that we give to communities and to young people, etc. So I made a promise that we had one, only to find that they had already been given up. But in the end, we managed to give her one. So digital devices is going to be a big issue in South Africa for women and young people in terms of taking advantage of the digital inclusion thing. And then lastly, police brutality. In the communities that we're dealing with, you're dealing with those who were impacted negatively by lockdown rules, where you said, okay, you can't sell fat cakes, the little things like cookies, veggies, and women having to look after their homes went out and sold, and they would be arrested. For you and me, if somebody arrested you and said the fine is $10, or maybe $100, that's manageable. But to a woman who sells cookies or tomatoes, that's a month's collection. So those are things that have affected the women. But our intervention there has been to be a buffer between them and the state through policy briefs sent to government. And before COVID, we would organize community events where we bring the people from government to account from the South. We'll bring magistrates, what you call judges there in the US. We would bring the Department of Health, the municipalities, that's local government, everyone to explain why are they not doing the things they're supposed to do, because as you know, entrepreneurship happens in an ecosystem. And if all of the other services, infrastructure, connectivity are not there, you can't thrive as an entrepreneur.
Hello, and thank you for your support of the Women's Empowerment Roundtable Summit 2021, hosted by International Women's Think Tank, United Nations Association of Atlanta, and the Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development of Greater Atlanta. My name is Nalat Black. I am the Sustainable Development Goals Director at United Nations Association of Atlanta, and it has been inspiring to work with Dr. Morant at IWTT in the creation of the summit. The women that I have heard from and learned from who shared their personal and professional experiences and lessons learned on how to create a thriving business and community action to progress SDG 5 gender equality gives hope that we can achieve gender equality by 2030. We have the tools, knowledge, and energy to continue our journey in creating a just, fair, and equitable world. Some key takeaway points from this summit that I'd like to share with you are: we need to work as a collective to advance gender equality. Women need to support each other and collaborate with one another, while male voices are also needed to be advocates for women's rights. Your individual actions represent the women brand. Through collaboration, whether it be between individuals or organizations, you get to analyze your needs and strategically plan things to build a thriving business or community. Women's participation in impactful leadership positions are needed across all levels of government and society in order to achieve the global goals. By having women at the decision-making tables, especially during humanitarian crises and emergencies, this ensures that women and children are not forgotten. And access to quality education is key to ensuring leadership development in women and girls in formal and community settings. Women are a valuable part of the economy. Women invest in resilient homes, organizations, and communities. Employers need to acknowledge that children and family life matters. A strong childcare system, like the one in Belgium, where there is compulsory parental leave for both parents during their child's infancy, empowers women to pursue their careers and still be mothers. Mothers bring in incredible skill sets that businesses can build upon, and they are wonderful team members. Bolstering self-confidence in employees can result in a skillful and efficient workforce. Violence against women increased during the pandemic, and it is vital for there to be a holistic effort in supporting the victims, whether it be through medical, psychological, or physical support, but also prevent the acts of violence in the first place by training police forces to recognize and protect the victims. Laws need to be in place to criminalize the violators and deter future would-be violators. It is vital to bridge the digital divide among women and girls, the poor in urban and rural settings, in refugee camps, in informal settlements. Isolation causes mental health issues. It deprives people of their potential for economic mobility and independence, of education in children. And it is vital for children to learn empathy, self-efficacy, and build confidence, which are skills that can help them escape poverty and thrive. By having access to the internet, knowledge in technical skills, and access to financial technologies, can empower women and girls and those in marginalized populations to survive and thrive. In the uncertain world that we live in, partnerships amongst organizations with similar missions and core values can determine how well a business or community are doing. Through sharing of resources, ideas, and responsibilities, partnering organizations can see an increase in their impact, outreach, and profits. Improving reproductive and maternal health systems can reduce poverty, increase educational outcomes, improve water and food security. Be committed to your goals and desires. Network and stay connected. Accept your vulnerabilities and turn them into strengths. By finding your tribe and running with them, you have a community of people who believe and support you, so you can realize your strengths and be your best. I'd like to thank all of our co-hosts, partners, speakers, and attendees in this collective journey to understand the causes of gender inequality and how we can move forward in creating a more safe, just, and equitable world. I'd like to leave with you a couple of quotes from our speakers. Firstly, don't ask permission to be great, because permission is not needed. And secondly, excellence has no gender. Thank you, and on behalf of International Women's Think Tank, United Nations Association of Atlanta, and RCE Greater Atlanta, I hope to see you at our next Women's Empowerment Summit in March 2022.